This is Beer in Front, part of the Odd Pods Media Network and Beer Media Group. Sometimes the beer in front of you is the best one yet. I'll talk to different people around the beer world and get their stories all about beer. That's Beer in Front, and it's coming up now. Welcome to episode 233 of Beer in Front. I'm your host, Dave Zalatoris, and Beer in Front is a proud Odd Pods Media Network member and charter member of the Beer Media Group. You may say to yourself, Dave, you're just some jamoke out of Chicago. How are you getting all these cool guests? Well, a big reason why is coming up later on in the show. I'm going to talk to Emily Hutto from RadCraft. She's one of my favorite, if not my favorite person in craft beer. I love working with her. She does a great job representing different companies in beer. I don't want to get more into it because I want you to listen to the interview, but stay tuned for that. I'm not going to do a lot of beer news. There's a couple things I want to touch on, but it's a nice interview, so I want that to be more of the focus on this show. So it's mostly going to be Emily and I talking. I think it was great. I enjoyed talking to her a lot, so stay tuned for that. FOBAB is coming up right around the corner. It's next weekend, so definitely check that out. Next week, I'm going to have a FOBAB preview episode, and usually I talk to Ray from the Illinois Craft Brewers Guild, and I love talking to Ray. We're the only two people in Chicago that are Chicago Bears fans and New York Jet fans. So we're the most miserable two people probably in this city right now. But I wanted to kind of mix things up. And instead of just getting from the guild, I wanted to talk to a couple breweries. So on next week's show, I talked to the folks at Old Irving Brewing, and I also talked to the folks at Solemn Oath. So kind of get a brewer's perspective on what to expect at FOBAB that's coming up next week. So stay tuned for that next week. I'll probably get it out a little early because FOBAB is next Friday and Saturday. So I should have that out probably Tuesday or Wednesday of next week. Also coming up, I'm going to talk to Blue Ox Malt. They're a malt house that's out of Maine. Really excited to talk to them and hear their story. How does someone get into malt? I want to know this. So that's going to be coming up in a couple of weeks. I want to do an episode on Revolution. Now, you may have read or heard that their original location on Milwaukee Avenue, the brew pub, is going to shut down next month. They're keeping the Kedzie location open, but I spent a lot of time at that Revolution since they opened in 2010. So I'm going to try to squeeze in an episode on the original Revolution location. Maybe I'll go there and, if it's not too busy, I could record a segment there. But that really kind of hit hard when I saw that pop up on my news feed last week. Also, I might be in a magazine. Yesterday, I get an email from Trent over at Illinois Brewing. Now, I love this. This is a quarterly magazine. You could pick it up at breweries, at high-end bottle shops. And he asked if he could, ask me a couple of questions for the upcoming winter episode. So hopefully I make the cut. But you might see my mug in a magazine. Who would have thought that? So I'll let you know when that comes out. I'm going to try to get Trent on as well, and we'll talk about the Illinois Brewing Magazine. And how do you feature me? I know my last name starts with a Z. I'm at the end of the phone book, but you got to dig deep to get to me. But hopefully I make the cut and I'll be in the next issue of that. In beer and beverage news, I'm going to keep this segment short because I want to get to the interview. A couple things that I saw that I want to touch on. You may have seen it, that Molson Coors, they're going to close the Leinenkugel Brewery in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin. They've been there for well over 100 years, maybe 150 years. So that's kind of sad. They've been with Molson Coors since the late 80s. So I know it's sad, but you had to figure sooner or later the big company was going to do something like this. But I do feel bad for the employees of Line and Kugel who were working in Chippewa Falls. And another thing, I don't know how I get sucked into this, but my friend Rihanna, who lives in Colorado, so Rihanna, you should be listening. This is a Colorado episode. She sent me something on Instagram about this new chick Claw Go handshake, which is White Claw, grapefruit, and a shot of Malort. It's the Chicago handshake. It's a shot of Malort in an old style. How is White Claw wanting to get in on this? But now she told me I had to try it. So now, like, I have to try it. So I don't know. I'm getting roped into this, but expect a video soon of me drinking a White Claw with a shot of Malort. Sweet Jesus, help me now. All right, welcome back. I'm so excited to talk with this week's guest. RadCraft provides communication support for the craft beverage industry. RadCraft is a major factor in why businesses that work with them are among the finest in the industry. Emily Hutto founded RadCraft in 2012, and she is by far my favorite person in beer, and we could get into that later. Emily, I'm so thrilled to meet you and honored you're here to chat today.
I'm honored too. Thank you for such kind words, Dave. You are one of my very favorite people in beer too.
Well, all right, before we get started, we need to get the important stuff out of the way. I have Moira Rose sitting next to me. Where is Joplin?
Joplin, the red healer, the cattle dog, is never very far away. She's right here next to me today.
Awesome. Yeah, I see a little tail every now and then walking back and forth. Oh, there she is, sitting in the corner. Very good. You have a bed, Joplin. You have a bed. Lay in the bed.
I know, and she's
Yeah.
still on the hardwood.
Yeah. RadCraft is such a cool company. I want to thank you for starting it. Is this something you always wanted to do?
No one has ever thanked me for that before. Thanks for saying we're cool. So thanks are in order to a college roommate, Trevor, who was really interested in home brewing. And through him, I got excited about home brewing myself before I could even legally buy the final product. I graduated with a journalism degree and I begged publications far and wide to accept my freelance words about craft beer and fermentation. And a lot of them said yes. So I was able to pursue my curiosity about malting and fermentation processes through my writing, which took me beyond beer to sake, distilled spirits, fermented foods, you name it. If it's fermented, I've probably written about it somewhere. And all of that writing landed me in the Library of Congress. In 2012, I wrote the book Colorado's Top Brewers, which is a story about the inception and the influence of the beer scene in my home state, the Centennial State. And back then, Colorado only had about 160 breweries. It's more than 500 today. In an effort to do my very best research possible, I visited just about every one of them.
Well, it's research. You
And
have to.
exactly.
Yeah.
I just wanted to do good journalism. And along the way, I met a lot of amazing people, and many of them asked if I might be interested in helping their breweries in their marketing and communication strategies. So RadCraft came along pretty organically. And if you'd asked me before I got it started if that was my plan, I never could have dreamt it.
Like, what did you want to be when you grew up? It wasn't this, but here we are.
A beer and malt communications professional. My sixth grade self didn't know what that was to even have that glimmer.
Are you still a home brewer? Do you still brew on the side?
Yes. So my home fermentation pursuits are a little more by way of kimchi and yogurt these days, but I still really love home brewing. And though I will say my equipment's a little bit dusty, I've got it all, and I should really take that cue to fire it up again soon.
Yeah, it's been a while. I think my last batch was a year ago, and I should fire it up again. But, I'm like you. I love doing everything fermentation wise. Like, I make my own kombucha, do the whole sour dough starter, everything like that. So yeah, no, I think it's fascinating.
So many things to ferment, so little time.
What was your background before starting RadCraft?
Sure. So I pretty much started RadCraft right at the tail end of what would have been a short-lived journalism-focused career. I graduated from the University of Oregon with a degree in journalism. I freelanced in the craft beer space for several years and then got right into RadCraft. So, I'm still doing a bit of more editorial journalism, but I've absolutely gone on to the dark side, like they say, and I do more in the PR space now. So really my background was just being a young home brewer and beer writer, who never looked back.
That's awesome. Like, the first beer I had was Macro. That was the stuff that my mother didn't drink beer, but my father always had Macro. Now, you're a lot younger than I am. What was your first craft beer experience? Was it a Macro or was it craft?
It was craft. It was, original craft. I have another college roommate, 2 of them to thank on this one, Patrick and Sean. They were from Chico, California. So I'm sure you know where I'm going with this. They
Yes, I do.
introduced me to the classic Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, so I have my epiphany beer, as they say, in common with a lot of other people.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with that. That's just a phenomenal beer. Well, right now, I'm going to crack open one from one of your partners, Ska. This is their Mexican lager. And I like how it says right on the can, the hop that they use. So they're using Saz hops in this. I need to thank Ska for this.
I love that sound, and I love this beer. So, Scott Brewing is in Durango, Colorado, where I used to live until just a few months ago. I moved a town away. And Ska's turning 30 in 2025. This Mexican lager has been around since 1999.
It smells phenomenal. I mean, it's a little darker than your normal craft lager, but I mean, I think the smell is good. There's good foam here.
So, this is probably what we know today as the OG American made Mexican lager. It was the first craft lager in a can in 2011, and it's highly decorated. It's won back to back Great American Beer Festival awards in the international style Pilsner category. And it's just all around that easy drinking Mexican lager, kind of subtle corn sweetness effect that I think a lot of us have known or come to know, and love about that style that really ska was part of inventing here in the United States.
Yeah, I mean, this is so good, and it's kind of a cross. I know a lot of people, when they think of Mexican lagers, think of Corona or something, and more of the craft Mexican lagers are closer to a Vienna lager, if you will, with more caramel malts, but this seems to be, like, right in the middle. I love the taste of this. This is excellent.
It's fun, experiencing you tasting it in real time, and I think you really nailed it on the flavor profile there. Scott is unabashed about the fact that they made this beer because they didn't wanna keep drinking Corona and feel, like they weren't drinking craft, but
Yeah.
this was their end of day, this was their river beer, and so they wanted to make something that emulated that.
See, now it's funny, you call them river beers, and we call them here shift beers, which I guess we could put our beers in the river, but the Chicago River is not as clean as the rivers by you.
Understood.
Yeah.
Yeah, the classic lawnmower beer is
Yeah.
another good reference
Yeah.
there.
You have a lot of great partners that you work with at RadCraft, from breweries and distilleries to malt and hop companies and pretty much everything in between. What makes for a good partnership between a company and RadCraft?
Dave, you are so right. Our partners are amazing. I'm just so lucky to have them and have worked with them in various capacities and over various times for these last 12 years. This I love this question. It really got me thinking, and I think that my answer is authenticity and engagement as key to success when I'm working with a craft brewery or a hop farm or a craft maltster to tell their story. So I think branding and messaging are the most successful when a company is really walking the walk on their mission statement and their values. And when they're clear about establishing these pillars and they hold themselves accountable for carrying them out, I think that we can convey their tone with a lot more sincerity as their marketing arm. We also need companies to take that time and energy to tell us their story over time. So the engagement part is really important there too. I always say that PR is a long-term relationship, and I found that the longer I work with a company, the more meaningful and authoritative press coverage we can secure.
Yeah, and the few that I've spoken with on this show, thanks to you, they all just seem like good people where that could be like the best compliment you give somebody. Yo, she's good people, he's good people. They just seem like honest, down to earth, good people that, like myself, I would want to get off the Zoom screen and meet them somewhere and have a beer and talk about their company or their farm or their hop farm. They just seem like genuinely good people.
That is the ultimate compliment. And you and I will get off the Zoom one of these days, and we will have one of those beers or a
Yes.
couple in person. Great beer made by better people is another one of my one-liners about RadCraft. This is a very relationship-driven industry. People are at the heart of what we do, and I would say it's their trust in us to tell their stories that makes my small business even possible. That mutual trust really keeps everyone grounded. People who work with the earth and live products tend to have accepted that some things are just out of their control. So there's a humility too that comes with farming, malting, or brewing and distilling too.
Does RadCraft provide everything regarding communications with companies? Like, do you do social media work for them as well?
I get that question a lot, and the answer is yes. We do everything under the communications, marketing, sales umbrella. Some of our partners we run the entire sales and marketing show for, and then some are more project based. Some join our co op on an annual basis. And for all of that, I pull from a wide net of professionals cast across the continent who can help with any number of communications, marketing, sales projects. No matter the work, we're always working really collaboratively with our partners. And especially when it comes to posting on social media, to your question, having someone in house tends to be critical. So while strategically and from a planning space, we can help from afar readily, it's usually critical that someone is there on a day-to-day basis, in particular because we're talking about a live product. The the beer is gonna change along its timeline when it's in the tanks, and so then you have to have some flexibility to your schedule. But all that to say, we tend to be strategists and planners of social media more so than those day-to-day executors of activities.
Yeah, because a lot of breweries, they have different events day to day. Yeah, somebody should be on staff, posting this, hey, come out today for such and such food truck or the release of our new beer, et cetera, et cetera.
Exactly. And let's be real here. I am just one person. My team is just one team. And if someone in a skyscraper in New York is running an urban brewery and we're out in the woods in Colorado posting about it, that might not always line up from a messaging standpoint. And so it's possible to work collaboratively to make that happen, but we're really mindful about making sure that we have that brand guardianship in house when we're working remotely with folks.
As it's
Let's
warming up in the glass, like I get more. Do they use corn in this? Because I'm almost getting some corn in the flavor profile.
You nailed it. Yes, there is corn in this recipe, and it has that kind of huskiness and slight sweetness, which I think differentiates a Mexican lager from something like an American light lager. But you nailed it, Dave. Good
Yeah.
palate.
Yeah, it's so good. And one thing, I'm looking on their website yesterday, which will lead to an upcoming question because I wanted to check something. The first thing that hits me is Skanksgiving. How cool is that? I wish I lived near you. I wouldn't cook. I would just order from Ska and get that looks fabulous.
So, in case you're not familiar, the skank is the dance move that those of us who are excited about the ska music tradition do when we're dancing to this music. It's kind of like a funkier version of the can, if you ask me. And if you Google ska skank, I promise you'll just see a bunch of fun people dancing, probably in some checkerboard outfits. Um, and skanksgiving and skank anything that rhymes is something that they kind of rely heavily on in their branding.
Well, the area itself, I mean, it's definitely on the Mount Rushmore of craft beer in the country. You have so many great breweries in your area, plus throughout the entire state, if we're being honest. What is it about this area that's so good?
Good question. I feel like I get this question a lot. And honestly, if you are out having the experience of being in Colorado or you name the state, you're probably going to appreciate the quality of the beer at its prime, right? The freshest beer is the best beer. So there's something to be said about experiencing it and being a part of the culture in Colorado, which has a lot of connections to the great outdoors. So I think there's something special there. A lot of folks say, "Oh, the water is really good here," and I do think that's the case for folks brewing out west. This is a malt state too. There's a lot of malting tradition in the state of Colorado, so there's a lot of versatility in what's available for brewers. Versatility tends to equal flavor, and all of the nearby farms that we have tend to equal quality of agricultural product that goes into the beer. So those are a couple of hunches, but I still think I land on the freshest beer is the best beer. So if you're not in Colorado, come visit us and experience it for yourself.
Well, looking at your portfolio of partners you work with, you have hop farms, you have malt farms. I see a yeast company there. Where's the water? You need to be involved with water. You need to promote Colorado water.
I think I probably should. That maybe that's the next tier of the business. Now that I don't want to say we've mastered malt, but that's definitely the space we're the heaviest in. So yeah, we've got malt, we've got hops, we've got yeast. Now we need to promote Colorado water.
If you were sending out a mix pack to somebody in another part of the country, what would be in this mix pack to showcase the breweries and beer of your area?
I love this question so much, and I put some good thought into it for you because it was a hard couple of decisions to make. So it's obvious, probably at this point, that I'm very biased to ska brewing. We've been working with them for a long time, and I was a big time ska brewing and music fan long before I was ever their publicist. So we got to get some ska in this mix pack. Durango's time honored brewery, they're by far the largest in the region. And their shtick being ska music and their entire brand being based off a comic book, I think is really unique. So we'll throw the Mexican lager in there, or maybe if the timing is right, the Oktoberfest, which is my favorite beer from Ska. I also want to put a Carver Brewing beer in this mix pack. If you're not familiar, Carver was the first brew pub in Colorado, opened in 1988. And they're still going really strong and making some of the best lagers, in my opinion, that you can find in the Four Corners. They will buy you a Colorado Trail Nut Brown Ale if you've just completed the Colorado Trail from Denver to Durango. So there's a really fun outdoor connection there.
How
And
long is that? How far is that?
ooh, good question. Let's look it up really quick because I don't want to get this wrong. When you're driving from Denver to Durango, it takes about 6 or 7 hours depending on the, route that you're taking, and a quick search on the interweb says that the Colorado Trail is a 486-mile-long trail.
That's a hike.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
A couple of major mountain ranges in there. You're well deserving of a nut brown ale when you arrive at Carver in Durango. So a couple more beers for this mix pack. I must give a shout to the Dolores River Brewery in the town where I live. Their patio is just one of my favorite places on earth. They've been beer making for almost 23 years. And Mark, their very humble owner, is a legend of Colorado beer in his own way. His name is Mark Youngquist. He's been integral in opening a lot of brew pubs here in Colorado and the Virgin Islands too. And, his settling in Dolores represents a really long and impressive brewing pedigree and history that makes DRB, the Dolores River Brewery, kind of this lovable 3rd place for a lot of residents around here. Um, let's throw Mark's Dry Stout in there because I've been drinking as much of that as I can lately. And then finally, I wanna throw a beer from Wild Edge Brewing in Cortez, Colorado into my mix pack. Cortez, is just another couple towns away from Durango and Dolores, so all kind of in the same area. Wild Edge brews with a bunch of Colorado-grown ingredients, my jam, and they're naming beers after one of my favorite books, The Monkey Wrench Gang, so it's hard to not include their Monkey Wrench Pale Ale in the mix. Not to mention it's made with hops from the Billy Goat Hop Farm, which is another of our partners up in Montreal.
It's unfortunate because it seems like in the last, or maybe since COVID really, that beer has been so hyper local where everyone's just focusing on their area. I couldn't get everything from Ska, but I used to at least be able to get the flagships. When I was looking on their website, there's nothing within 100 miles of Chicago. I remember Left Hand, another Colorado brewery that, I know they were going through some issues earlier in the year, but like I couldn't find a Left Hand or even their Nitro Stout. I even couldn't tell you the last time I've seen that. How has this shifting marketplace with everything being so local, how has that affected like the companies you partner with and RadCraft in general?
That's a good question that I find myself answering a lot more these days, just with the state of the marketplace. Shout out to that Left Hand Nitro Milk Stout. What a classic example of the style. Long live that one. But I think what we're seeing is some of those bigger regional breweries like the Left Hands of the world. It's not so much that they're pulling back, but they've decided to regionalize or get a little more focused in on their community, which makes sense to me. As there are more and more breweries than ever before, I think we're pushing 10,000 in the United States. There's not as much of a need for a big regional a couple states away to come through and provide a portfolio that isn't otherwise available because we have so much choice these days. So I think that speaks to the value of really being able to enjoy something that's local and a little bit fleeting. This is what I have available to me now, and so I'll enjoy it versus seeking out flavors from afar. I see that in consumer behavior a little bit more. And then I'll add too, Dave, I mean, I've worked in beer for 15 plus years now, and it has always been a dynamic industry for different reasons, of course, but it's always been in flux, in my opinion. So right now, although I must say it's really disappointing to see some companies struggle with these low numbers, I'm also seeing this place in the industry of a lot of consumer intentionality. People care so much more about where their beer comes from than ever before. They care a lot about where their groceries come from too, and so there's a parallel there when it comes to choosing your food and choosing your drinks. And I think what we're seeing on the brewery to brewery level is that companies who are invested in that really quality beer, local ingredients, investing in their communities, I mean, those are the ones who are thriving. And arguably, sales and marketing strategy matters more than ever before. So, regardless of what's happening in the wild, dynamic industry that we're all working in, those who RadCraft works with have a lot of awareness and value in what we do. So we stay busy, but that doesn't mean that it's not fundamentally changing year over year to reflect the marketplace.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe next year we'll have some other national brewery or beer that's out there that is not a hazy little ranger of some kind. Yeah.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
we should do this again next year and say,
Yes.
okay, what are the new trends? And you have such a cool job in the industry that you get to be a part of it as it's changing in real time, which I think is so compelling.
Thank you. One thing, because I'm in a huge metropolitan area. Now, further downstate, we do a lot of farming, but in Chicago itself, I don't see, at least with my eyes, people really caring about where their ingredients come from. In Colorado, being more of an open outdoor state, do people want to know where their hops come from or the malt that's coming in their beer? Are they into that?
Increasingly so, yes. And if I have anything to do with it in my career, people are going to be walking up to bars and asking, what was made here with local malt? What was made here with local hops? Yes, that's a little bit hopeful, wishful thinking on my part, but I do think that we're seeing an increased interest in where our beer comes from. We talk a lot about local breweries, but what about local breweries using local ingredients? I think that's a really special selling point for somebody who has a lot of choice. And I also think for someone who is maybe the only brewery in a small town, choosing local ingredients is actually a way to support other local businesses too. So there's an economy, supply chain conversation that we open that space up to as well that I think consumers will really resonate with. That said, I mean, I'm well past the time of what my elevator pitch would be. So, those who are new to beer, recently converting, or maybe not as interested are not as quick of a sell on local ingredients. I think it probably takes a couple pints or a couple repeat visits to really get to a space where you get to have that conversation with them.
Yeah, and I don't want to get too political on this, but I was reading a couple things that with the new regime coming in January with extra tariffs that are going to be out there, it might be more beneficial for companies to stay local and buy their malt and buy everything in their community. So hopefully it's more beneficial to stay local.
I hope so too. I think that there's a really special feeling of a brewery as a third place. And if breweries can really capture their community in that way, they're going to create repeat customers, and those customers will take ownership in being a part of that community establishment. So, from my lens, the more often you can really curtail what you're doing to repeat customers and the building of community, the more likely you are to sell more beer.
Exactly. Now, not only you're a busy person, like your business card has to be like 8.5 by 11. You have RadCraft. You host workshops on social media marketing, which are fantastic, which I did one back when I was rehabbing my back injury. Those are great. So you should sign up for that. The next one is coming up this week on the 15th. So hit pause when you're done with this, go to the link that's in the show notes and sign up for that. You also are going to have a beer marketing course at the University of California, Davis, along with Julie Rhodes starting next year. That is so flippin' cool. I am like stoked for this. Are you tired yet, Emily? Do you need a nap? Because you have a lot on your plate.
And I have a lot of gray hair to prove it. But in all seriousness, thank you for the kind words about our workshops. They are super niche social media workshops that answer FAQs that we get from our network. And we have rock star guest speakers. This next one, like you said, is this Friday, November 15th. Julie Rhodes of Not Your Hobby Marketing Solutions is joining me for social media automation that sells more beer. That one's pretty self explanatory. And then beginning in March of next year, Julie and I are going to be teaching digital marketing for craft breweries via the UC Davis Continuing and Professional Education Program. That's a mouthful,
Yes.
but all that to say, it is an 8-week course. It's open to all, and this digital marketing for craft breweries course is really designed for folks who are in the process of opening a brewery, maybe one day plan to do so, or perhaps they have an existing brewery that they want to rebrand. So those are all good reasons to sign up for this course taught by myself and Julie Rhodes, who I must give a shout out to. I love teaching, co-teaching with her and just knowing her in general.
Now, is this going to be like a one off or is this going to be, you said it's an 8-week course. Is this going to be something that you continue down the road with, volume two or what have you?
Well, I guess the volume one would have been a course that Julie and I taught this past year at the University of Vermont. We did something similar. And it will be our first of eh, hopefully many courses that we do for UC Davis, but at this point, we're only signed up to do this first course. I have to guess that a lot of it is determined by how well it does. So if you're listening and you're even just a little bit curious or inspired, feel free to reach out to me and I'm happy to answer your questions.
Yeah, and I'll include all those links in the
Thank
show
you.
notes. Are you gonna still continue to do the workshops once the UC Davis course starts?
Absolutely. So we'll have another round of workshops in 2025. I'm currently building the program. So if you, Dave, or your listeners have any suggestions for social media specific topics that you'd like us to explore, I am all ears.
Not that you don't have enough on your plate, but are you gonna do another podcast after Industry Relief? That was like a season of Ted Lasso. It went by way too quick. You're like, "It's done?" You have the best theme song in all of podcasting. You need to get that back out. You need to do another podcast. I know you have your microphone still there somewhere, Emily. It's there. You need to pull
It's
it
right
out.
here.
It's with the homebrewing equipment. Dust it off and start another podcast.
I'm so inspired, Dave. I really should. And yes, long term, I love podcasting. I actually love it so much that I'm in the process of launching an incubator of sorts for budding podcast projects. I learned via the RadCraft Industry Relief podcast, which thank you for the kind words. Our theme song is very Seinfeld-esque.
Yeah.
But I learned through this podcast something that I know which is that podcasting is so much work and interdisciplinary work, no less. And I'd really love to help others get through some of the bottlenecks that we came across when we were producing this first one. So there's a lot more to come on this front, but for now, I'll give a little shout out to the first podcast to join our new podcast network. It's the Ryan MTB podcast. He's based in Durango and he interviews notable names in the off-road cycling sphere. So there's a lot to come there, and I'd be happy to keep sharing information as it comes down our pipeline.
Well, that's cool. I know I've heard you on other shows doing research for this. And another thing, off the subject, there's another person with your name out there. So I'm Googling, there's someone I'm looking like Emily does vaccines. Oh, I need to talk to her about this. It's a different Emily Hutto. There's someone in
There
the
is
medical field. I'm like, oh, I needed to know about things.
there is a medical writer
Yeah.
somewhere in the Midwest
Yeah.
by exact name, and
Mhm.
she is covering topics that I will, never touch in my life. Um, yeah, I see her name a lot too when I'm looking for things or excuse me, she comes across my radar really often, and she probably is wondering the same thing about me. Like, why are all my friends asking me about beer?
Yeah. That's episode 1 of the new podcast. You both, I like it.
I like this
Yeah.
strategy, Dave. Yeah.
Yes. Emily, I thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun. Where can people find out more about RadCraft, the workshops, the course, everything?
You are so kind, Dave. You're one of my favorite folks to work with and to talk to. Thanks for all the questions. So you can find us at radcraftbeer.com. If you'd like to participate in one of our workshops, you can go to radcraftbeer.com/shop. And if you're interested in learning more about the UC Davis Digital Marketing for Craft Breweries course, you can go to cpe.ucdavis.edu/brewing.
And I'll include all those links in the show notes because if you're driving, focus on the road. Don't be writing this down. The links will be down
Please.
there later. Yes. Emily, thank you so much again. We'll hit end and we could talk about why you're my favorite person, but I'm really touched that you came on to talk this afternoon. I appreciate it so much.
Well, that goes both ways. It was
Yeah.
such an honor, Dave.
Joplin, enjoy the rest of your nap.
See you, Moira Rose.
All right, I'm going to have another beer from Colorado, courtesy of Lone Tree Brewing. If you remember back in April, I had Jerry on from Lone Tree, and we were talking about their euphoric seltzer. But I do like their beers. I was there, like I mentioned on that episode, with my wife Ruby years ago. Thought it was really cool. This is a Mexican style lager. This is the Mexican lager episode of Beer in Front. But this is a Mexican style lager, 5.3%. This has brought home some hardware as well. This is a two-time medal winner at the Great American Beer Festival. So let's crack open the Mexican lager from Lone Tree Brewing Company. This is a really nice color as well. Light, good couple fingers of foam here. Smells really good. I got nothing I can argue with the aroma here. I think it smells fantastic. That's really good as well. I get more of like a malt sweetness up front on this one than I did from the one at Ska, but I really like this one too. I think this is really good. Not getting a lot of hops, but you're not expecting a ton of hops in a Mexican lager. No, that's really good. There is a little bit there that I'm getting now on like the second sip of a little bit of hop flavors there, but it's really good. Yeah, this is great. This is one you could crush these all day long. 5.3% alcohol. You know, you could have more than one of these if you're sitting outside. Well, now in Chicago, it's cold. The heat's going on all the time. So I don't know if I'll be sitting in the backyard much, but this would be a good beer to sit and have a couple of. Really good. I really enjoy like the flavor of this. I like the malt sweetness that I'm getting from this. Yeah, no, that's a winner. If you're in the Colorado area or where Lone Tree distributes, I've definitely put this one in the cart. I think it's really good. This would be one I'd be sitting watching football games or something, having a couple of these. So if you're around and you see anything from Lone Tree, especially the Mexican lager, you need to put this one in the cart. All right, that's going to wrap things up for this edition of Beer in Front. I thank you very much for listening. If you'd like to support the show, head over to patreon.com/beerinfront for more information. If you need to get a hold of me, email me, dave@beerinfront.com. If you have any show ideas or suggestions, I'd love to hear about it. Once again, I need to thank Emily Hutto from RadCraft for coming on, talking about her great company in the Colorado area. If you're in beer and you're not just a person that's like me who just has a drinking problem, if you're actually in the beer business, you need to get a hold of Emily and have her do some work for you, because Emily is the best and takes care of her partners. So please check her out. All her information will be in the show notes. Have a great week. I'll see you next week. And remember, sometimes the beer in front of you is the best one yet.